time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
Thank you for being with us on this Friday edition of the show. A lot to do over the next 60 minutes. It's a great weekend. Indy 500, Coca-Cola 600, big weekend for auto racing, really around the globe. Jerry Bonkowski, a longtime friend of mine who's covered auto racing for 1,000 years, will help us break down the Indy 500 today. Tino Pattigno, his usual NASCAR Friday spot, he will drop by as well. I want to start things out in the NBA, and boy, oh boy, man, does it just feel like it's meant to be for the Celtics right now? It just does. It feels like every star imaginable is lining up for this basketball team right now. You get the Pacers collapse in game one, as Sam Yarnell stops by the show to say hello, graces us with his presence on this Friday. Just everything that they have to win a champion. It is literally the epitome, I will keep saying this, of championship or bust. Anything short of that is a colossal disappointment at this point. When you get set up with, the tomato can Heat, which is basically, the Heat minus Jimmy Butler. When you get a Cavaliers team that's largely without Donovan Mitchell. And now a Pacers team that looks like it could be without Tyrese Halliburton because of a hamstring injury that he suffered in game 2. Again, after that colossal collapse in game 1 for the Indiana Pacers. Joe Mazzulla here. It's just being handed to you on a silver platter. A trip to the Eastern Conference Finals. A no-stress trip to the Eastern Conference Finals. And likely the NBA Finals now for this Boston Celtics team. But say this, though. All that being said, Jaylen Brown could not have been finer last night. One of his finest moments. For a guy that didn't even make the All-NBA team, by the way. And look, you had back-to-back nights, Sam Yarnell. Eventually, I'll let you talk. You had back-to-back nights in the NBA where you had guys that were not happy with different things. You had Kyrie the night before getting poked by Anthony Edwards. Poke. Instigated. Antagonized. And then you have Jaylen Brown getting poked by, the voters who don't put him on the All-NBA team. And he's getting poked, and he goes out and throws up a 40-burger. Not a strange coincidence, by the way.
And the thing about the Boston Celtics is, Jason, they're only going to get better between now and the end of the NBA Finals. By game 5, if we get there of this series, they'll have Kristaps Porzingis back. And when they get him back, they'll have to bring Al Horford off the bench. And Al Horford has been incredibly hot for them these playoffs. Let's not this Celtics team is the real deal. Barring some crazy injury to Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum, I don't think that anyone can beat them. I said this on the show a couple of days ago. It's not fathomable right now the way that this team's playing the cohesive basketball they're playing. The Boston Celtics are far and away the best team in the NBA, and like you said, they're being kind of handed a title now with this Halliburton injury. But even, what's funny about this series to me, Jason, is as much as game 1 finished close, much of that game was not close. And as much as this game didn't finish close until the Halliburton injury, we had a pretty close game there for a little bit. I mean, Boston went on a couple of runs to extend their lead to double digits, but it felt like every time they did, Indiana was getting themselves right back into it. It's been interesting to see how when you get to the end of both of these games, we're talking about Boston's utter domination over Indiana. They've played a good series. Boston is just that much better than everybody else in the NBA. I still think the combination of Luka and Kyrie is going to be very, very difficult for them. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that series looks when Dallas
does eventually dispose of the Minnesota Timberwolves, as we told you they would. The Celtics right now minus 210 to win the whole thing. Dallas, your next best, plus 370. Minnesota at plus 550, and the Pacers at plus 7,500. And by the way, you can now get the Indiana Pacers to win the Eastern Conference Finals at plus 3,000 if you are psychotic and want to give away your money. And the Celtics are minus 10,000, by the way.
The thing is, if you really think the Pacers are going to win at this point, the numbers that the books are offering, quite frankly, on the NBA futures too, just have no value. If you really think that your team or a team that you like is going to win, you're better off betting them in the money lines of the games that you think they're going to win. Same goes with the Indiana Pacers. If you really think they're going to have a chance in this series, just bet them on the money line for every game that remains in the series. You'll have to at least go 3-2 to force a Game 7.
It is
3-1 to force a Game 7.
It is remarkable, though, that here we are in, after Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Final. We're talking about another star, the star, on a team that's trying to win a championship, part of the Final Four here, as it would be, of the NBA. Another player injured. Another one. It is the theme of this postseason, of all the guys. I mean, the Celtics have played a Heat team without Jimmy Butler, a Cavaliers team without Donovan Mitchell,
Jared Allen,
Jared
Spencer
Allen too.
Dinwiddie,
Thank you. Absolutely.
Donovan Mitchell.
Yes. And now this. I mean, it goes without saying. This series was over when Jaylen Brown hit that three, though. When Jaylen Brown made that three late in the fourth quarter, which I didn't even mention yesterday on the show, was just the heartbreaker of heartbreakers for me, because I had the Pacers to win that game last night. Had it. Or on game 1, I should say.
Ago.
Yeah, 2 nights ago, whatever it was. I had the Pacers. And I even sent Sam a text and said, "It's over, Sam! Boston's in trouble! The Pacers are going to win game 1. And Sam's like, "Oh, wow, what's going on?" And then my heart was broken. You broke my heart, Fredo.
It was so funny because I wasn't watching the game at the time, and you texted me that. I think I turned it off at some point thinking that Boston was going to blow Indiana out. And I get the text from Jason, and I was like, oh my God, is Indiana going to come back and win it? I turned the game on, and immediately Indiana hands the game right to Boston. Jaylen Brown hits the shot.
Nice job, Rick Carlisle. Yeah, nice job, Rick Carlisle. You didn't just cost your team game 1, you cost them the series. And you cost me some shekels. We're coming back. College basketball. College sports.
Over 13 million Americans were affected by identity theft in 2022, and the threats go way beyond just credit card fraud. Today's identity thieves can use your information in ways that are easy to miss by just monitoring accounts and credit, like opening loans, transferring home titles, even committing crimes.
Someone got my social security number, made a driver's license, and it was used for criminal activity.
You can do so much with a social security number that I didn't know could happen. They drained my bank account. It was terrifying.
You're even more vulnerable than you realize. Your information is exposed through online shopping, banking, even corporate data breaches. No wonder there's a new victim of identity theft every 3 seconds. Only LifeLock alerts you to the widest volume of threats all in one place, like someone trying to use your social security number, open a new loan in your name, or even commit a crime in your name.
There was a big yes button and there was a big no button. I clicked, "That's not me," and LifeLock took it from there.
If you become a victim of identity theft, a dedicated U.S.-based restoration specialist will be assigned to your case and work to fix the issue on your behalf.
If something happens, you have somebody fighting for you.
All LifeLock members are backed by the LifeLock $1 Million Protection Package, including reimbursement for stolen funds, personal expenses, and coverage for lawyers and experts up to $1 million. It can be dangerously easy to steal your identity. With LifeLock, it's easy to help protect yourself.
I will be with LifeLock forever.
Join the millions of people already protected by LifeLock. And for a limited time, save 25% on your first year with promo code 25TV. All plans include a 60-day money-back guarantee.
Call 800-710-7531.
Or visit lifelock.com/25TV to save 25% on your first year of identity theft protection. Enroll now.
Attention families with a loved one in a nursing home. If your loved one has suffered from bed sores, falls, broken bones, dehydration, or even death, you may be entitled to a substantial settlement. If you have a loved one who is injured in a nursing home, we will find out what happened. State violations are found against nursing homes every day. You have a limited time to file your claim, so don't wait. Call 800-398-5999 and speak with one of our attorneys. The call is confidential and free.
All right, let's kick things up a notch as we continue with the program. Get into some auto racing in about 10 minutes. Jerry Bonkowski, longtime NASCAR beat writer, longtime auto racing beat writer, will stop by the program, give us some thoughts on the Indy 500. And I think the most fascinating aspect of this year's Indy 500 and NASCAR race is the man doing the double, Kyle Larson, racing the Indy 500 and the Coca-Cola 600. And his qualifying for the Indy 500 was really impressive. We'll talk about that with Jerry as well. But a big day on Thursday for college athletics, Sam Yarnell. A game-changing day, potentially, for college athletics, with the announcement of a deal being in place for, I mean, it can't be more straightforward in terms of what has been announced, and that is schools can pay athletes directly. Simple as that. Here's $20 million, go spend it. If you're a Division I college program, and then they've got to figure out how they're going to disperse that. And look, the devil is in the details with all of these things. And there are a lot of aspects of it that still need to be figured out. And there are still people involved in lawsuits that led to this agreement that have to agree to it. There's still a judge that has to agree to it. Let's make it clear. This is not a done deal by any stretch of the imagination. But as, you know, the powers that be in college athletics have said, this is what is needed on some level in order to save college athletics from these lawsuits that are out there that could essentially bankrupt college athletics. But this changes everything. Let's just assume everything is true on the surface and that you're going to have colleges directly paying athletes now, which essentially is turning college athletics into professional sports. You're making them essentially employees of the university in some regard. And the whole power dynamic between coaches and players changes. The decisions to leave after a year or 2 years changes. All of it changes, Sam. This is a monumental announcement that came on Thursday.
It is, Jason, and I mean, obviously, the three federal antitrust suits that'll be settled or have proposed to have been settled over 10 years, $2.7 billion being given back to these current and former student athletes, athletes dating back to 2016 when these three cases really popped up. But the resolution of these three cases, at least as far as I understand it, and as far as, you know, talking to a few of my friends who used to be and still are college athletes, it seems like these three cases being settled was kind of the hurdle that everyone was waiting to get over. The barrier between these schools paying the players directly that NIL was kind of working around. Now with the settlement of these, you're going to open the floodgates and you're going to cut out the middleman that is these NIL foundations funded by alumni associations, so on and so forth. And I think that you'll see a little bit of a trickle-down effect with the school having more control over where that money goes towards the less popular sports, right? We'll start to see field hockey players getting paid and softball and baseball players getting paid.
You think that they're going to take any significant part of that money and divert it towards things like field hockey or women's volleyball. See, because to me, it almost sets up for the next round of lawsuits, which is those field hockey players and those women's volleyball and rowing and crew and squash and racquetball. All of these different programs saying, well, wait, you get $20 million. Why am I getting $7 to play, to be in the rowing team? To me, it sets up a lot of logistical problems.
So I think that exactly what I said is kind of forward thinking past those logistical problems. And on top of all that, when you as the university start paying all the athletes across the board, great example, the field hockey team, right? When the best player on the field hockey team is actually making enough cash to help them get through the school year more comfortably as a near professional level athlete, you're going to see that reflected in the field hockey alumni donations, right? Like, there are so many reasons that universities will now use this power that they're given to not only get more money out of it, because that's the nature of universities, right? But to especially diversify it a little bit more, because they understand that they're much more susceptible, we'll say, to a lawsuit from one of those groups than one of these NIL collectives is, because of the nature of their business.
I wonder how they came up with the number of 20 million.
It seems very arbitrary to me. Very arbitrary.
Especially when you look at how much these schools are clearing every year. And I'm not saying this is every school. What Penn State probably makes just from the football program. What, Nebraska makes just from the football program. What did Colorado make last year in year one of Deion Sanders? And that, we don't need to get into it, but how much money, me and Deion, but how much money did they make? I mean, 20 million almost seems like a drop in the bucket in some regards. It does. And I think that the NCAA, in making this decision or in coming to this agreement, it seems like they did want to keep NIL in the back of their head, right? Like, it seems like they still wanted to leave the window open for at your big SEC football schools, right? Where the Alabama offensive line, they'll probably be making $5,000, $10,000 a year when you divvy up all the $20 million that the University of Alabama can give away. But when they're getting the car deal from the local dealership in Tuscaloosa, that adds another, $15,000, $20,000 onto it. They had to leave the window open for NIL for exactly what you're talking about, Jason. But this arbitrary number feels like it's one that schools across the Division I can afford to pay their athletes with their revenue. Absolutely. But not every school. If you're
I think every school can at this number.
You think even the smaller D1 schools can?
Yeah, like Quinnipiac.
You think Prairie View can? I don't know.
Grand Canyon?
Yeah, Grand Canyon, exactly. We're going to do some auto racing next, starting with the Indy 500. Jerry Bonkowski stops by the show. Don't go anywhere. All right, we kick it into another gear on this Friday edition of the show. It is a great weekend for auto racing. We're not even going to get into F1, which has its big event in Monaco this weekend. We're going to stick to Indy 500 and the Coca-Cola 600. Tino Pattigno will drop by in 10 minutes to talk about the Coca-Cola 600 and all of his betting analytics for the Indy 500 as well. But I want to talk about the race. And to do that, we bring in an old friend of the program. The one and only Jerry Bonkowski is here, longtime auto racing writer, hangs out with us on the show to help us preview the Indianapolis 500. And Jerry, first of all, great to see you, my friend. Great to be with you and talking to you about auto racing again, something we haven't done in a while. Let's talk about this Indy 500 from the perspective of, because I'm sorry, the most fascinating story to me is the double. It's Kyle Larson competing in the Indy 500 and then going over and doing the Coca-Cola 600. And I last night, as I was preparing for the show and putting the show together, I went and watched his qualifying at the Indy 500, and watching Jeff Gordon acting like a proud papa, watching him go around and run his qualifying was just so cool. I mean, he qualified fifth? I mean, It's pretty remarkable for a guy to come over from NASCAR and qualify fifth doing this for the first time.
Exactly. Well, there's an old adage in the movie Smokey and the Bandit where Burt Reynolds and Jerry Reed, talks to Burt about driving a forklift. And Burt says, I can drive any forking thing out there. And that's Kyle Larson's story. I mean, he has driven everything out there except for an IndyCar. I mean, he grew up in sprint and midget racing. He moved over to NASCAR. He's been a champion in NASCAR. He's been a multi champion in the sprint and midget worlds. This is going to be a historic race. Now, the biggest thing about Kyle Larson, two things, actually. Number one, weather. Right now, as we speak, the forecast says 97% chance of rain on Sunday. Not a good thing for Kyle Larson. But number two, from a perspective on the track, he did fantastic. I think he did much better than a lot of people thought he was going to do, in practice, qualifying, etc. So he's all ready and he's ready to go. The problem, though, at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, as you're well aware of, Jason, is that one mini mistake, 1 inch off, and that could be disaster. And Kyle Larson, he knows that this is a whole different car. It's a lot lighter than what he's used to driving in terms of a NASCAR stock car. The problem that he likes to do, it's historically with him, he likes to ride the high line. He likes to ride against the wall. You can't do that in IndyCar. You do that especially when you're coming out of turn one, going into turn two. They call it the little short shoot there. He'll wind up in the wall coming out of turn two. That's how precise these cars are.
Let me ask you, too. I mean, it's one thing to do a qualifying lap on an empty track.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
put a whole bunch of other Indy cars out there, and it's a completely different world. Is there anything that can simulate that for him?
Not really. I mean, 33 cars at speed, and they have what they call is dirty air, and that can just do absolute havoc to your aerodynamics. It's, to your steering, all that kind of stuff. So, Larson's a guy that, I'm very optimistic, especially if we can get this race in and not worry about the weather. I'm very optimistic that he can do very well. The problem, though, is old habits die hard. And, if he tries to think he can do with an Indy car what he's done historically over the years with a NASCAR stock car, a sprint car, a midget car, etc., he's going to be in trouble.
Yeah. One last thing on this. Who's been the most successful historically to cross over from NASCAR to open wheel?
Tony Stewart, for the most part. I mean, he did the double twice. He's the only guy that's ever completed both ends of the double. I mean, we had John Andretti 30 years ago this year. I was actually with John. It was a historical thing. He was the first one to do the double. Robbie Gordon has done it 5 times, never was able to finish both ends of it. Stewart's done it twice, like I said. And then the most recent one, 10 years ago, 2014, was Kurt Busch. He did very well, finished 6th of the Indy 500. Looked good in Charlotte for the Coca-Cola 600, but unfortunately he had mechanical issues, and he bowed out about 200 laps or 200 miles from the end of the race.
All right, I got 2.5 minutes left. Joseph Newgarden, your winner last year at the Indy 500. Historically, how difficult is it to repeat?
It's extremely difficult. And, he's got 32 other drivers that are just as hungry, if not hungrier, because he's already done it. And some of these guys have not done it. Alex Palou, the 2-time champion, of IndyCar, he definitely wants to win this thing. Scott McLaughlin on the pole, Newgarden's teammate. Will Power, Newgarden's teammate. Penske is going to be an extreme force in this race, but there's also a lot of guys that, people may not be looking at. I mean, people say, well, Kyle Larson, this is a publicity stunt. No, Kyle Larson could win this one, believe it or not. If everything goes in his favor and the weather stays okay, Kyle Larson, to me, probably is, I'd say, in the top 5 of my picks that I would have to make to potentially win this race.
How about Alexander Rossi?
I like Rossi, and he won it in, was it 2016, the 100th anniversary. He's had a difficult time the last few years.
He's got a great car.
And, when he was at Andretti, I mean, things just didn't play out the last few years for him. So now that he's over at Arrow McLaren, really has got a great team behind him. And he's kind of been a kind of like a big brother, if you will, to Kyle Larson. Even though I think Rossi, I think, is younger than Larson, if I'm not mistaken. But he's been kind of a big brother this month, and but that also says that Larson, he's got a great car. Pato O'Ward's got a great car for Arrow McLaren, and you got Callum Eilert, who's been kind of a last minute replacement for David Malukas, who got hurt off the track. So it's going to be a very interesting race. Weather obviously is the big key.
I got about a minute here. IndyCar's place in the auto racing pantheon right now. We talk about F1 obviously being what it is. NASCAR's had a really nice season with some amazing finishes. I mean, for all the years for me to really pick up NASCAR and watch it as much as I have, this has been the year to do it. Where is IndyCar in all of this?
Well, obviously this is the biggest race in the world, the Indianapolis 500, but IndyCar continues to struggle with, a viewership. It continues to get, struggles at racetracks. There's a lot of promise for the future, but it's getting through the next year, maybe 2 years before things really start picking up in a bigger way. We'll see what happens. But I think that if Larson wins or whoever wins this race this Sunday, it's going to go a long way towards helping IndyCar get and build even bigger to what they should be.
And it goes without saying. I mean, Kyle Larson's going to bring those NASCAR eyeballs over the Indy 500 with him. So, I mean, it goes without saying that's obviously going to be a very big deal. Jerry Bonkowski does a terrific job on all things auto racing. It's good to catch up with you, my friend. Be well. Enjoy the racing this weekend.
Same to you, sir. Stay dry.
We're coming back. Tino Pattigno on the other side breaks down the Coca-Cola 600 and more.
Attention families with a loved one in a nursing home. If your loved one has suffered from bed sores, falls, broken bones, dehydration, or even death, you may be entitled to a substantial settlement. If you have a loved one who is injured in a nursing home, we will find out what happened. State violations are found against nursing homes every day. You have a limited time to file your claim, so don't wait. Call 800-398-5999 and speak with one of our attorneys. The call is confidential and free.
All right, something to consider coming up in 10 minutes involving the strike zone in Major League Baseball. Rob Manfred making some interesting comments about that. All right, let's not delay. Tino Pattigno is here, ladies and gentlemen. He is here for your auto racing betting needs and then some. He's going to be in Charlotte for the Coca-Cola 600, so we'll definitely ask him about that. But I want to start with the Indy 500 because we never talk about IndyCar. Obviously, it's of all of them, it's the one we talk about the least. But the Indy 500 is the Indy 500. And before we get into that, I do have a NASCAR related thing I want to get to, and that was what transpired last week at the All-Star race between Kyle Busch and Ricky Stenhouse, who went whack while Joey Logano was being interviewed on Fox following the race. You had this incident take place between these guys. Stenhouse gets fined $75,000. That is a record-setting fine. Give me some sense for kind of the shockwaves that sends through the NASCAR world.
Well, a lot of drivers and a lot of teams and personnel around NASCAR and especially around Ricky Stenhouse Jr., were confused. And the reason is because that was, like you mentioned, a record-setting penalty. It was a $75,000 fine, and then crew members got a 4 and 8 race suspension out of it as well.
His dad.
Now, when Ricky talked about it, and he said that, he was mostly confused because the drivers are told you can go after it. If you have a problem, like this is allowed. Fighting is allowed. It's not like it's not allowed. It's happened before. The drivers are allowed to handle their frustrations in any manner they choose. Now, obviously, there could be punishments and repercussions because of that. But I think Ricky's main thing was the fact that he did not expect it, and he was confused by the large amount of penalty that it was in being the fine, and also nothing for the other side of the equation in Kyle Busch as well. Now, I think NASCAR's thought process on this was, and the way I like to put it was, Ricky stood on business, because not only did he get wrecked on lap 2, but he parks his car in Kyle Busch's pit stall, then tells team owner Richard Childress to hold his watch, and then after that, he waits for Kyle Busch for 198 laps, almost 80 minutes, for Busch to finish the race, just waiting there at in his hauler and then by Busch's hauler. Now, the reason he waited was because he can't get out. Like, there was no tunnels in North Wilkesboro Speedway, so until the race is over, he literally had to stay there. I think that was the biggest thing that NASCAR took into consideration, was because it, like, you couldn't cool down after. I think you had 2 hours, and yeah, rightfully so too. I'm Team Ricky in this standpoint, because he really did stand on business, and once Kyle Busch was there, he took his shot and punched him in the face. And if you ever wondered how much it would cost to punch Kyle Busch in the face, $75,000 is your answer.
He was stewing. To have to sit there for 198 laps, he was obviously stewing. All right, Kyle Larson. I went and watched this. I was just talking about it with Jerry Bonkowski. I watched his qualifying last night as I was sitting here preparing for the show. That is wild to watch. For a guy that's never done this before, to go and qualify 5th, what kind of a chance do you give him at the Indy 500?
I give him as great of a chance as everyone else. Now, let's put things in perspective, though. Like you just mentioned, he will not have the experience from these cars like everyone else does. But if I'm putting Kyle Larson in any type of vehicle and say, can he win that race? I'm going to say, yeah, he has a chance. So that in terms of chances, I think he can go out and win the Indy 500. Yes, I believe that. But at the same time, like, I just feel like that's a testament of how good of a driver and race car driver that Kyle Larson is, and an athlete and pro. He's a pro's pro. You put him in any different vehicle, I think he can win a race. He can roll it. I mean, you saw it. He qualifies 5th, then goes to North Wilkesboro Speedway for the All-Star race, and it looks like he's going to get in the top 3. Started from the back, finishes 4th. Like, it's just he can roll out of bed and win a race.
Guy is amazing. 650 though. Now let's talk about the odds. Scott McLaughlin obviously is the betting favorite as the pole sitter at 450. Joseph Newgarden, who won the race last year, at 550. Are you amazed that Kyle Larson is that heavy of a betting favorite?
I am, and I don't think he should be. Now, I'm obviously high on him in terms of his talent and his ability to drive a race car, but when we're talking odds, how can he be one of the favorites and in his first start in the greatest, one of the greatest spectacles in motorsports? And we'll see it on the NASCAR side as well. Like, they are just not taking into account, I guess, the fact that he does have to do the double, and the amount of miles that go into that, the amount of exertion on your body, and with it starting at the Indy 500. I mean, look, I'm going to bet on him. I'm going to bet on him because I do not want to not be a part of that cash if he does win, but ultimately I would have liked to see at least 10-1 for him.
All right, real quick here on who you like for the Indy 500 as far as betting is concerned.
Well, Pato O'Ward dominated this race last year. I like Santino Ferrucci for a little bit more value. He's plus 1,800, but the Penske guys are the ones to keep an eye on as well. I mean, they have the power. They're hungry in this one, it seems like, and that would include McLaughlin, like you mentioned, and Joseph Newgarden to go back-to-back at plus 550.
Yeah, I like Alexander Rossi, too, at 1,000 over on FanDuel's. Got one of the better cars out there as well. All right, Coca-Cola 600, real fast here. I need your favorites. Obviously, Kyle Larson, the favorite to win, which is crazy at 450. Denny Hamlin at 600. Tyler Reddick at 800. Go.
All right, so William Byron led 91 laps in this race last year, finished 2nd. I like him. He's big-time Byron, plus 800. Tyler Reddick's been fast at comparable tracks to Charlotte, finished 4th at Texas, 2nd at Vegas. He's plus 850. And Martin Truex Jr., he's been due. We've been talking about him. He's plus 900. He's dominated this race a bunch of different times, and I feel like with it being a 400, 600 mile race, 400 lap race, 4 stages. This is going to be the longest race of the entire season. I think that actually plays into a driver's hands like MTJ, who can make the adjustments along the way.
Great stuff. Tino Pattigno. Check him out on X at Tino Pattigno. Enjoy the race in Charlotte, my friend. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you. I'm excited.
What's up, guys? What I'm about to show you is going to change the way you shave your head forever.
You can shave your head in 90 seconds or less.
With no cuts or nicks. It's 100% waterproof.
It even works in the shower.
Introducing Remington's Balder Boss. With increased flex and 5 dual-track floating head design, get over 60% more head coverage for a faster, closer shave and skin-close results.
No nicks, no scrapes. Fit in the palm of my hand, and the results were amazing.
Shave in the shower or with any foam or gel with Japanese-grade steel blades plow through the thickest of hair. Anytime, anywhere. There's even a pop-up trimmer to complete your perfect groove. Now, you can try the Remington Balder Boss in your home for 30 days for just $14.99. Complete with a 5-year limited warranty and 100% satisfaction guarantee. You can also get our ear, nose, and brow trimmer free. Just pay separate processing and handling.
Give it a try. You won't be disappointed.
Order your Balder Boss now.
Odds and ends coming up in 10 minutes to wrap up this Friday edition of the program. Get you into Memorial Day weekend. Easy for me to say. All right, Sam Yarnell, something to consider. Consider this. MLB commissioner, the Rob Manfred. By the way, I think it's Sports Business Journal, does their yearly awards. They awarded League of the Year to Major League Baseball. I guess the improvement in attendance as a result of the pitch clock and the changes and all of that stuff, they gave it to Major League Baseball. All right.
Sure, and all the injuries as a result of the fact that we can't use sticky stuff anymore, and taking time out of everybody's day to make the umpires TSA security guards, and also changing the game fundamentally by putting a runner on second base at the start of every extra inning. What?
Okay. Before we go too far off the beaten path here, Rob Manfred yesterday, speaking to the media, talking about the changes eventually when it comes to calling balls and strikes. One of the most fundamental things in society, calling balls and strikes. It is one of the most fundamental aspects to any sport, the calling of balls and strikes. For a while, we heard about robot strike zones. They've been trying it out in some levels of the minor league system. Thank you, Angel Hernandez, by the way. This is all your fault, Angel Hernandez. New York Times, through The Athletic, actually has a piece that came out, I think, today. And I haven't had a chance to read it yet. But it actually talks about, is Angel Hernandez really as bad as everybody makes him out to be? I'll answer the question for you, yes! So Rob Manfred says, a challenge system is more likely, or at least more favorably viewed by players than an automated strike zone, which is kind of interesting because the argument made by players is the art of framing pitches. That aspect of the game is important, the ability to frame pitches. And I got to be honest when I think about this, Sam. No, it's not. A ball's a strike or it's not a strike. If you have the ability to get it right 100% or within 99.8% like Hawkeye does with tennis and the lines and the imprint of the ball, and we see all that all the time. If you have the ability to get it right 99.8% of the time, then why not get it right? Why do I need the art of framing a pitch? We've already gotten away from what baseball is with this stupid circus rule in extra innings with a pitch clock on the game of baseball, which was never a timed game. I don't want to hear about the artistry of framing a pitch. It's like flopping in the NBA or flopping in soccer. Framing a pitch is basically just flopping. It's faking. It's not where a pitch actually is. It's moving it after you catch it. Sorry.
Okay. That is certainly one of the takes of all time. That is certainly a take that exists. Oh boy, I wish our guy David Ardsmo were here.
Where are you, DA?
The difference that you're talking about, Jason, is pitching versus throwing, right? Like if we get to an automated strike zone, everyone's just going to start throwing, which is fine. But the art of pitching, which is a real thing, involves making your pitch, getting to a favorable count, throwing a pitch that deceives the hitter, whatever the case may be. Throwing a good pitch is not always a perfect strike in the zone, right? It may just barely miss. But that said, in a day and age where spin rate is so crazy, break is at a point where we've never seen it before, framing is more important than it's ever been, solely because the point where the catcher receives the ball is much different than the point where it crosses the plate. I would say not framing is almost more like flopping or in the NBA or in soccer, because at that point you're taking what actually happened and straying further from what actually happened. Framing is just putting the ball back where it crossed the plate. I would also say that there's a distinct difference, and we're not going to get into the nuts and bolts of framing versus receiving, and I think that that's something that modern catchers have kind of perfected the art of receiving pitches in a way that really leads to them being framed better for the umpire. But at the end of the day, framing to me is more important than it ever has been in a day and age where you've got more wicked break on the ball, higher spin rates than ever on baseballs. You've got to show the umpire where the pitch crossed the plate, not necessarily where it ended up in your glove as a catcher.
Deceiving. It's not receiving. It's deceiving. It's another CIEVING word. That's what I say. See, we're literally watching highlights here as we have this conversation, and you can literally see the catcher catch the ball and then move the glove. Like, it's so obvious to watch if you watch it on television. But you know, what do I know?
Well, I will just say with regard to the challenging pitches thing,
I do like
too,
the challenge system better. I do like the challenge system.
It's better than the robot ump because, you know, we just talked about the MLB being the best league. It's going to lead to better pace of play with the challenging versus the robot umps.
Yeah, and the challenge thing literally takes seconds. Like, I've seen it at work in the minor leagues, and it is successful. You know what's successful? Odds and ends. We're going to wrap up the show, wrap up the week of shows with that next. All right, just about time to put the wraps on this baby for another week. Monday, this note, will be a largely best of show. You'll have to tune in on Monday, because it is Memorial Day, and we do like to take a day off once in a while. So we will be off on Monday largely. We'll have some of the most up-to-date stuff in segment 1 of that show, but for the most part, we will be off on Monday. Time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell. The end of the Josh Giddey investigation as far as the NBA is concerned, and they basically came to the same conclusion that authorities did, in that they could not prosecute this case or prosecute this matter, neither the authorities or the NBA, because of the fact that the cooperating, or I should say the lack of cooperation from the young female involved in the videos that were purportedly put out there of Josh Giddey and this young female, wasn't cooperating. She wasn't talking. Here's the one thing I was thinking about, and I was reading this in the story and went back and looked at a bunch of stories about this. And if I'm wrong, somebody will correct me on this or I'll get sued. Josh Giddey, to this day, not only has he not commented, but not once did he deny that was him on the video with an underage female. Not once. Not once. And as much as we like to compare this to, well, guys are wrongly wrong accusations and this didn't happen and we've got to protect, men from false accusations and all this. And where do you go to get your reputation back and all that? Not once did he say, I didn't do it. He's going to have to wear that around with him for his entire career, however long that may be. But just thought it was worth mentioning. Never once did he deny it.
As a jury member in the court of public opinion, I would like to say that we have already sentenced him. And yeah, there's no recovering from that. I mean, the memes are never going to go away, brother. They're never going away.
No. Oilers Stars last night in Dallas, a thrilling finish in double overtime. Connor McDavid, the game winner, as the Oilers take game one, 3-2. He redeems himself after a penalty in the first overtime that could have cost his team. Early in the second OT, very early in the second OT, wins it.
That penalty was incredible. I was watching this game, and I thought that when Edmonton took that penalty, especially, we've been talking about it on the show for so long, the way Ottinger's been playing, I thought Dallas was going to win it handedly. Obviously, they kill the entire power play, the 4-minute power play for the double minor. It was incredible to see out of Edmonton. Great win for them.
It's going to be a fun series.
Draisaitl got his point,
yes,
so both of our bets for both of the series looking good through one game.
It's going to be a fun series. I think that's going to be a long series. I think both of these conference finals are going to wind up being long series. Maybe the end in odds and ends for Rafa Nadal. I want to know who's more pissed off about the draw for the French Open at Roland Garros, which we talked about this week with Patrick McEnroe. If you missed that conversation, we'll have part of it on the weekend edition of the show for those of you that get it. Otherwise, go check out the podcast, Sports Wrap with Jason Page vodcast available wherever you get your podcasts. One of the things he said was the draw was going to be everything in terms of, would Rafa Nadal get a favorable opening round matchup, or as a wild card, was he going to get shafted? Well, they gave him Andres Zverev, who just won in Rome and is one of the top 6 or 7 players in the world. You're going to have Rafa Nadal going up against Andres Zverev for his opening round match. And I'm sitting here saying to myself, I don't know who's more mad. Are you more angry if you're Nadal because you get Zverev, or are you more upset if you're Zverev because you get literally one of the all-time greats in Rafa Nadal?
Yeah.
I texted Patrick McEnroe that question, by the way. He said Nadal would be more upset.
I was going to say, if I'm Rafa Nadal, I'm mad that they're giving me Alex Zverev, the number 4 in the ATP World Rankings right now, as a wild card. That's ridiculous. With the history that Rafa Nadal has at Roland Garros, I don't understand it, but I will be tuning into that match. It'll be a very exciting one, and I'm sure I'll have a bet out there for the people.
Odds and ends, the end as we know it, for Wheel of Fortune.
Tavares, right in the butt.
What?
No. Blake.
This is the best.
Yeah, that's it.
Tavares, I don't know if you're married, if you're heterosexual, on the LGBTQ plus spectrum somewhere. You're going to have some questions to answer when you get home. Just putting that out there. You got some splaining to do. Just want to make that known.
I've seen a lot of Wheel of Fortune in my day, probably more than any 23-year-old should have. That takes the cake, man. That is the stupidest thing anybody has ever said on nightly network television.
Pat Sajak's retiring at the end of this year, by the way, for those that don't know. Ryan Seacrest will be taking over that role because he doesn't have enough, by the way.
Pat Sajak announced his retirement right after that guy said that. That was what drove him to retirement.
My favorite part is the woman at the end who goes, "What?" The woman like two spots down, who just lost her mind. It's going to wrap it up for us. Thanks to Jerry Bonkowski, Tino Pattigno. Sam, thank you to you. Everybody have yourselves a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday or over the weekend. Bye.